Recording in. All right, so we're gonna go through chapters 5 through 9 now.
Yeah, chapters 5 through 9 of The Ride of a Lifetime.
Perfect. So chapter 5 is second in line. Just go through and sum them up like we did last time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Chapter 5 talked about his work with Michael, which was the leader of Disney before he took over. So you want to summarize that?
Yeah. It is basically about how he kind of came to being that second in line versus it was basically, you'll see in the next couple chapters, especially, is like how he works his way up, if that makes any sense, from being from when the Disney merger and ABC, right? ABC merger happened. So that's basically just going on, talking about how he ended up becoming the second in line. How they got tight, and that some of the tips that Michael would give. So
yeah, it talked about him like learning about the job, basically.
Yeah.
Preparing for the future of taking over that position.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting chapter for sure. Talking about like how the stuff that he did at ABC influxed into his work for Disney.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see too, because you see in that chapter, you see like some people trying to, like, you kind of see where politics a little bit comes in. I mean, it comes in more prevalently later on, but you kind of see where people start kind of striking their own deals with each other, and how they're going to interact, and they have their what's the word I'm looking for? Like there's Sandy Litvack,
Yeah.
right? And he was talking about how it was like, oh yeah, I was, trying to get these other positions, but at the end of the day, Robert wanted like the COO, and then this Sandy Litvack was like the quasi COO. So
and Rune kind of had the same like own personality type trait, so you do see that sort of division in the chapters there.
yeah, and you see it start happening. Like, yeah, this is the first chapter where you really start seeing like, oh yeah, hey, this is how I'm going to work my way up the corporate ladder.
Yep.
In a sense. Then you go into chapter 6, right? And then it's good things can happen, which is it's a little ironic at first, when you're reading throughout it. Yeah. It kind of goes through how, Michael kind of refounded, Disney, and kind of rebuilt it a little, you revamped it, right? Kind of tried, they're in the process of like trying to save the company.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of see, like, as you're going throughout the book, like there's kind of, it's just bummer after bummer after bummer, throughout the entire time, in that chapter, I should say. And it's like, oh yeah, something's good, and then it kind of craps on each other the entire time.
Yeah, and it was an interesting way to learn, like that happens in business.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It's gonna happen no matter what, no matter how hard you work, and no matter what happens. I mean, especially with uncertain times, it's gonna happen. So it was nice to learn about how to deal with that and how they dealt with that, especially being such a big company.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the the very first section, and it goes, Michael refound Walt's company, and then you go down a couple sentences, just lower in the paragraph, and it goes, Michael came on and Disney's net income fell 25%.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, obviously, I mean, they were in the process of rebuilding, right? And like, I mean, to use sports, right? You see the rebuilding process with teams all the time. It's the same thing as with businesses, right? You got to start over. You got to kind of revamp things, reinvent,
right,
restart, in a sense.
One of my questions from that chapter was kind of like, I wonder what Walt Disney would have thought about how the company had continued after his passing. I wonder if he had seen the company going in that direction, or if he would still have been running the company or still alive, how he would have done it differently. It was just something I was thinking, just curious about.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see, like, when I was thinking about it, right? Because I mean, obviously, at the very beginning, they're still talking about like the revamp of the whole animation, right? And I mean, you can kind of see it. You can see the differences in, like, Disney movies from however many years ago, like, black and white Mickey Mouse to now. I mean, it's Pixar, I guess, right? But like, finding people associate with Disney, Finding Nemo, right? Incredibles, stuff like that. It's just there's such a different contrast between the two, that it's, yeah. and it's kind of cool to like, read about like how that actually is a process, and they had to think about how they're going to change it.
Yep, for sure, man. Let's see, moving on to chapter 7. Let's see here. It's called About the Future. It's about the future. Yeah, just talking about how to continue with the company.
Sorry, I just saw, I was turning through the pages again. I had forgot that they called them albino Mickeys in there. Sorry, let's get into the chapter. It's about the future. Who's Disney board? Oh, yeah. Okay. This is where the chapter where the politics really kicks in, right? So you see what Scott Miller, right, comes in, the brand manager.
Yeah, and the polarization between the two for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you see the difference, and then immediately, like, he's going for that CEO position, right? And you see, like, they're like, he's like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to campaign, and like drops whatever on his desk, right? The campaign playbook. And it's like, oh, how do you think he goes campaign, like question mark, like, like wondering, what are you talking about? Like, why do I have to campaign for it? And then, that he goes in depth, like you gotta convince the board. And that goes back to the whole, making your way up in like corporate America or whatnot. You gotta kind of politic a little bit, which is
there's going to be politics and everything. And this chapter kind of explained that about how he worked his way up, but there was obviously those polarities and those differences. But
it was interesting to see how, like, or at least read about how they were talking about, like, oh yeah, hey, now we got our swing votes, but we're talking about like a board of, I don't know how many people were on the board. I don't remember off the top of my head, but
but it's not a presidency, or it's not
a presidency or anything, right? Where, I mean, we're talking about, I guess like you're the leader of the company, right? But like,
it's still not that big of a deal to
think
full board and approval and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little you don't think about it like, oh hey, my job, like, performance is just gonna be whatever, that's what's gonna give me my promotions. But then you realize, you go, okay, I gotta make sure people like me, I gotta make sure I'm like relatable to people, that kind of stuff. So that's a whole other thing. And that's just the main thing about this entire chapter, right?
And he noticed, one part of the chapter I noted was there's like 3 clear strategies that he had. He kind of laid it out in the book, the 3 different strategies. Time that they are listed out here, like time, branding, high quality of the content that they have, embracing technology, so moving towards the future. Like the chapter says, it's about the future. So looking forward in having that jump on technology definitely would help them succeed. And then number 3 is to become a global company. Like they're opening up those parks in Shanghai. They're doing their films in different languages, stuff like that. Those 3 strategies, I think, were crucial on the success.
And I remember they were talking about in one of the chapters. I don't remember if it was this chapter or if it was the previous chapter, but they were talking about how one of the main deals when he came on from ABC, like he was the chairman or whatever of ABC, right? And coming on, they're like, hey, I need somebody to actually like run this project. And then immediately, like they're talking about, hey, I want to enter the market in China. And just heading on that entire project, I mean, right there, you build a reputation, right? But after that, it's still this chapter basically, it ends up talking about how it's not enough. You know what I mean? You can have all the accomplishments, but you still got to be able to, politic your way there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what chapter 8's about. Yeah. So this is kind of like the split in the book where they go into the second part of the story, more like
it more about him leading. That's what they call section 2. They call it leading, right?
There you go.
And it's about him as the CEO, not so much him working up anymore.
Yeah, it kind of changes the tone of the book to being the man in charge. So
6-month period. Yeah. So it talks about how when he was becoming the CEO, right? There was still, like any job, right? Any good job, they'll do it before somebody leaves. They'll train them up, whatnot. So Michael's still there, still telling them, teaching them everything. Going through the process, how it works, how it should work, how we've done it for years and years, whatnot. I mean, there's other things that you can change in it. But I mean, here's the formula. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it was this chapter. It was. I don't remember if it was this chapter or one of the chapters before, but he was also talking about how when they're like learning about the Imagineering or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how people, what is it? Micromanagement's underrated. Yeah. So they're talking about how micromanagement was underrated, and it's one thing like being one of the the cogs, right? Like you're managing projects, whatever. Yeah, that's one thing. But when you're the CEO of the company, like you got everything's gonna fall on you, right? So micromanaging is underrated, right?
And yeah, it's kind of important. You got to make sure that everyone's on task and everyone's doing what they should be. So it's not a good aspect of that role of CEO. Like you kind of see yourself as that high poised leader, but it's still
Yeah.
something that you got to take care of. And
Yeah, and everyone knows how they feel. Like everyone's pretty much, for the most part, got the same feeling about micromanaging, right? Like nobody really wants to do it, but
right.
it's important, you know. And sometimes, there's micromanaging too much, which I mean, he talks about in the book too, is that it micromanaging. Like he agrees with micromanaging to an extent, right? Even when that quote was brought up, he agrees with it to an extent, but
you can always take it overboard, and you got to be careful.
You can always take it overboard, yeah, and that becomes a problem, right? Because then everyone's walking on eggshells, and they don't, they're always worrying about what to do next.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
This next chapter 9, was pretty interesting because he had some of those photographs, the black and white photographs from a long time ago. It was cool to see like his progression from being the introductory role with like the Twin Peaks, that failed program, working his way up, seeing Walt Disney, his relationship with Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a bunch of interesting. It was interesting to see like the photographs because then you actually get a perspective of like what the guy looks like. About his life,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it also takes you through like stuff like his first board meeting. There's all kinds of things in this section that's it's a big deal. Like I mean, these are big things that are happening. I mean, it's shaped what we know of Disney today. You know what I mean? That I mean, Disney and Pixar are always going to be synonymous with each other.
Yep.
Like,
and that's just kind of how the entire world sees it, honestly, because it is a globally reached company.
I mean, when you think about Pixar, you think Disney. When you think Disney movies, you think Pixar, right? I mean, that's just how it is.
Yep.
Yeah, no, but definitely cool. I mean, you get all the pictures of you get pictures of the Twin Peaks group. His relationship with Steve Jobs is a thing, like a big thing in this.
It just helped me like visualize like what he was actually doing, being there in that position. Because I mean, we're reading the book, but you can only visualize so much. And just seeing those like extra cues, helped comprehension there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're sorry to interrupt. I mean, you're seeing all like they have pictures of all like the big accusations that everyone knows about today, right? There's ESPN, there's Star Wars from Lucasfilms that he's purchasing. Yeah, the Steve Jobs thing, like I said. But yeah, ABC. You see the pictures from ABC. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that Star Wars thing comes up in a later chapter, but man, that was such a big acquisition there that he led on. Was a pretty amazing feat for sure.
Absolutely.
The thing that this chapter like pointed out was with Michael, the guy he was working with, like taking his position, the kind of bittersweet ending that he had. I mean, he wasn't signed on as a continuing to work for Disney. Like, sometimes you'll be demoted or like just take a lesser job, but you still have those connections. He kind of just was let go entirely. And so it was a bittersweet chapter there for sure, just reading about Michael and his experience and the loss of him working for Disney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything's. I mean, the majority of this chapter. I mean, yeah, I mean, you see the loss of Michael, right? That's a big theme. But I mean, you see the bit with this chapter, specifically, right? I mean, we see. I talk about the accusations, but it's everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is a big
everything, and it's a majority of the chapter's pictures, right? It's majority of its pictures. It's about who and how these acquisitions happened. Just little snippets like, hey, this is who we are now, and what's happened at this time.
Just a synopsis of everything that happened in the introduction of his job. Just basically going over everything. It's a big achievement and a big responsibility for sure. So
yeah, that's a good old late Chadwick Boseman.
Oh yeah, that was it. Didn't he pass away recently?
Yeah, he passed away like a couple of years ago now, I
Yeah,
think.
I'm not super familiar with Disney Pixar like
Yeah, but I mean,
films.
you see him with all the new Disney. And it's like everything he's accomplished is like in this section.
Yep, it's just a
So,
big old life accomplishment.
I mean, if you were gonna read like one section, like out of this entire book, one chapter, right? I mean, this would probably be the chapter to get to know what he's done the best, you know? I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
if
I'd
you're,
agree.
yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Cool. Well, shall we move into some of those questions that she gave us?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, what were some of your favorite quotes or passages from the chapters? Importantly, why did these quotes stand out to you? What made them memorable or interesting?
Let's see. I had a quote written out here. Let's see. The quote is people sometimes shy away from taking big swings because they assess the odds and build a case against trying something before they'll even take the first step. One of the first things I've always instinctively felt, was to take the long shots, and that long shots aren't usually as long as they seem. So when you think about that in a business aspect, he's talking about how he's making these massive deals, these massive mergers, dealing with all these high level corporate businessmen, but not everything is as crazy as it seems. Like the long shots aren't usually that long, which is something that I'm going to think about for sure whenever I'm in a business setting, and knowing that this man ran Disney and he's saying that himself will
Mhm.
give you the confidence to know that like not everything is going to be that critical, and you'll be able to persevere through anything that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, it puts in perspective, like, don't limit yourself, essentially, right? I mean, don't, I mean, you can achieve what you think you can achieve. You just got to actually, put in the work and actually pursue it. You know what I mean? And I
Yep.
feel like so many people, they just don't know how to pursue things. So they don't, or they're scared. They do know how, and they're just scared to do it. So
Yeah, you
they
calculate
don't
those
get nowhere.
risks beforehand, and just doing that is gonna limit
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
achievement. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'll
cool.
go back. I'll just go back to the same quote that I was talking about earlier. The quote that stuck out to me was micromanaging is underrated.
Yep.
Which I mean, for me, like growing up playing sports and whatnot. I mean, especially baseball, right? And the details matter, right? So all the little stuff matters. If you, I mean, it's just you screw up, right? I mean, it can be a little minuscule mistake, right? It like they say in the book, like it can change everything. It can be the difference between failing and succeeding. I mean, it's just I think that's one of the most important. That's the most important thing I've taken away from, not, I shouldn't say the most important, but it's one of the main really important things
Yeah,
in this book that I've
absolutely.
taken away is micromanaging is underrated.
Yeah, and it's something that you don't think about. It's often overlooked. I mean, people
Mhm.
see micromanaging as a negative aspect of anything. So, but knowing that he's saying that it's underrated and that sometimes you got to get it done, and it's something to take away for sure. I agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, even to connect to something else, right? I mean, we talked about in class, right? In marketing, we talked about the Burger King ad with the whole it was all moldy and whatnot. They put the pictures out. It's just it was to show that it's fresh, but I mean that's probably a miscalculation on their part, right?
Yep.
Because now it's just unappealing. So I mean, had say the CEO been micromanaging the marketing team, it might have gotten a
Something
little different.
different.
You know what I mean?
Yep,
So
absolutely. For sure. Well, those are two good quotes for sure from those chapters. Seems to be like these are some of the more important chapters of the book.
yeah, absolutely.
Good quotes there for sure.
Um,
Let's see. What new things did you learn from these chapters, and which was most memorable? Kind of already spoke on that regarding those. I mean, the micromanaging thing, and like we talked about, I think some of the things that we learned was through his experiences. Just every opportunity he has to talk about his experiences leading Disney is something that we can learn from. We can learn how he ran the business and apply those principles and practices into anything that we're going to come up with in life.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, no, I mean some of the big things, right, in the actual book, like I mean, it just the book as a whole, right? Not even necessarily the chapters that we've just read. I mean, you look at the deals that have been made, right? And it for me at least, like if I'm sorry, I just got to recheck the question, make sure I'm actually answering it. Um,
No worries.
so okay, so new things, right? I mean, new things. I mean, there's all it's just learning the details of some of the deals they've actually made. For me, the entire book. I mean, deals that he's been making all this entire time. I mean, I think I mean, it puts it in perspective to what can actually, happen
Yep.
versus like, I mean, like who thinks you're running a business. I'm gonna go negotiate with Apple. I'm Steve Jobs.
Right.
I'm gonna go buy Star Wars. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna go fly to China and open up a theme park.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just one of those things. I find it extremely interesting, and it's definitely just like it really puts things into perspective for me, at least in terms of what's actually achievable.
Yep, absolutely, man. Let's see.
What questions? What questions do you still have after reading these chapters?
Do you have any questions on it?
No, it's all pretty clear and concrete. I feel like for the most part. I mean, I don't really have anything that's super confusing.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, the later chapters were definitely more definitive because it was just a personal accolade of what.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just basically running through like what he's doing and everything. I mean, I guess if I had a question, I mean, how has he, if anything, how has he done like the political game beforehand versus like right when he was just trying to go for CEO? You know what I mean? How has he
Yeah,
worked his way up the corporate ladder? Say like an ABC, right? How he worked his way up the ladder. Just
yeah,
something
that'd
like
be
that,
an
maybe.
interesting anecdote. But I feel like his success was a lot more within the Disney Channel or Disney business. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I can't really think of anything questionable. I mean, the deals he had with Steve Jobs, learning from him, I kind of wish he went into more detail about that.
yeah, a
Just
little bit.
Jobs was such a significant businessman. I mean, he's one of the most well-known people in the entire world.
Mhm.
Like Robert Eager is obviously a successful man, but no one knows his name. So if he had gone into a little bit more detail about how and what he learned from Steve Jobs, I that's the only thing that I would have added to the chapter. Or the only question I would have had.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with everything. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. All right. What do you think about the author's research? Was it clear where the author got his or her information? Did the author rely on credible sources? Like we said last time,
Yeah,
his
it's pretty
book,
hard to
right?
beat.
It's his experiences. Yeah,
Yep.
it's all primary sources.
It's pretty hard to get or hard to get more credible than the man who's writing the book.
That yeah, from the writing about yourself, right? I mean, it would have been nice to like maybe he puts in like quotes from other people too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Like,
I can see
and
that.
that way you can actually get a little bit more perspective from other people's point of view
Right.
versus just his.
And which I kind of saw was informative with the pictures in this chapter.
Yeah,
Kind of gave us that outside viewpoint, at least just like a picture worthy viewpoint. So that was part of it for sure.
um,
See, did do issues discussed in the chapter affect your life? How so? Do they affect you directly or indirectly or day to day life?
yeah, man, they bought Star Wars and they changed Tower of Terror away from Twilight Zone, and now they put Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed.
Ah, come on, man! They're just getting rid of all the good stuff. I mean,
I'll
Star
be,
Wars is
I'll
great.
be honest, yeah, I wrote on both now, and Guardians of the Galaxy is pretty good. Twilight Zone, I like the whole spooky aspect of it, but no, Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, I went on it when they were doing the Halloween theme, so that was kind of cool. But
That,
yeah,
that's
I mean,
cool.
it's a cool ride. It's the same ride, obviously, but
Yeah.
little
I
intense.
mean,
Yeah,
the Star Wars thing affects me because that's what my mom named me after. That's why my name's
there
Luke.
you
So
go.
my sister's name should have been Leia, but
Yeah,
how it goes. But I mean, I don't think it affects my personal day to day life. But
no,
knowing he's out there and watching Disney succeed, it's all super interesting stuff.
yeah,
And it's something to follow on the stock market. Like I said last meeting, got some stocks in there, so it's nice to watch it grow, know what's going on. I mean, it doesn't really have a huge impact on anything day to day, but long term, it's a cool company. It's something that we all experience. I mean, pretty much every child in history that I know has gone to Disney at least once.
Mhm.
It's a thing that you do in our culture pretty much. You go to Disney when you're a kid. So
I mean, like you talk about pop culture, right? I mean, I mean, they're almost like above pop culture. So I mean, they are pop culture. I mean, everyone knows Disney,
yeah,
right?
they're
I mean, I
literally
don't think
part
you
of our culture.
I don't know if you go up to anyone, and I mean, you go up to 99% of people. I mean, 99.9. You know what I mean? Like everyone's gonna know who Disney is, and like just Disney, just yeah, the company as a whole. I mean, yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, I feel like Disney has touched every person's life
Hmm.
almost all entirely, at least
Yeah,
in some
absolutely.
aspect. So knowing that this man had an influence on that is pretty crazy.
All right. What are the short-term and long-term consequences to the issues raised in the chapter? Is that something we just is that the one we just did?
I don't think
No. Oh,
so.
did we do the issues chapter affect your life? That's the one we did.
Yeah.
So yeah, so did reading chapters, hold on. So what are the short-term and long-term consequences of the issues raised in the chapters? Are these consequences negative, frightening, or positive, affirming? How so? I think it's just reassuring, kind of knowing how, you know, how the what's the term for it? I don't know. I was about to quote Hamilton, but which is now Disney too, right? So,
Oh man.
uh,
But yeah, I think it was all overall good. Like I said, in some of the aspects, it was a little bit disheartening knowing that Michael was just like leaving the company on a bad note. But when the overall part of Rob taking over the company is all good stuff, and he did a good job. And like I said, he had to make some long shots, and some of them failed. But in the end, Disney's still succeeding, so he did a good enough job to continue the company.
how the sausage gets made. That's what it is.
There you go.
Yes, there we go. All right. All right.
I think
What
we
solution?
actually skipped one. Did the chapters evoke any feelings, and what kind of feelings? So did you have any feelings reading the chapters, Chris?
Nothing that I have in different from Disney as a whole. So,
I would
like I
agree.
said, it's cool to get to peel back the curtain or whatever. But
Yep.
yeah. All right, yeah. So what solutions does the author propose in the chapter? Are the proposed solutions sensible and practical? Do you agree or disagree with the solutions?
There wasn't a lot of challenges. I mean, he proposed some solutions to continue the company by working, or one of the proposals he had here was ceding to the Pixar valuable sequel rights to the film we'd already released together in Toy Story, Monsters Inc. and The Incredibles in exchange for 10% stake in the company. So that proposal was a pretty big opportunity that obviously worked. So
Yeah, there was one problem that we probably should have brought up was when they're talking about the Pixar merger, right? And it goes the board will never let you do it. And it says
um,
Pixar will reject Disney as an owner as a body rejects donated organs. There were many more, but one in all cap letters, distraction will kill Pixar's creativity. Basically saying that, Disney and Pixar just wouldn't mesh together, which I mean, at that point, I mean, we see they did, right?
it didn't look
Um,
like they would back then, though.
yeah, so it's kind of he pushed through it. So it's one of those things. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you gotta trust your gut, right?
Yep, and like he said, those long shots aren't always that long. So
Yep, absolutely. Was there one more question on here?
I think so. Let me pull it up. Let's see. What have
What?
you learned from reading
Yeah,
these chapters? Did the reading broaden your perspective and personal or social? I mean, like we talked about with the political side of things, bringing that into business, that broadens my perspective of what's going to happen in the future.
yeah,
I've had a big corporate office job, but knowing that those things are going to be there, is something to think about for sure.
mhm,
Other than that, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. No, I think the main takeaways are just the whole learning how to not. It's like a quick crash course on how do you run a business, right? And how do you be that guy at the top of the food chain? So I mean, essentially, that's kind of what it is. I mean, bottom line, like you can read and hear about all this stuff, but I mean, you're never gonna know necessarily what to do until you're in it, and having just the thought, right? Like, oh yeah, hey, this Pixar deal might be good. Oh, the board says this. Let's just go ahead with it anyhow, right? I mean,
Right.
it's one of those things like you're gonna have to have experience with other business deals before, right? To have that kind of a gut feeling, right? And I think that comes into when you're building up, as in you're coming up the ranks. You kind of get these experiences as you go, so it helps you when you get to that position of CEO. But like having that, still having Michael with him too was probably a big thing. That helped him learn the ropes as well. So
Yeah, that was a good
having a mentor too. I mean, that's a big thing.
Having him basically teach him what to do was huge, even though I'm sure he would have been able to handle himself. Just having that extra knowledge never hurts. So
Yep, absolutely. Cool.
Let's see. I think is that all?
That I think that was the last one.
Cool, man. That was a good work right there. That was
Cool.
good. Some good chapters. I like
Yeah.
the book so far. It's been pretty interesting. So
Absolutely. So next session we'll conclude the book, and then the fourth one we'll go ahead and we'll do it while we're putting together the whole presentation. Yeah, perfect.
That's the way she laid it out. We just have those questions to answer, and we'll be good to go.
Yep, absolutely.
Exciting. Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah. See you, man.